Good afternoon, it's Adrian Bridge from Taylor's Port, joining you here from Porto. I have to say I was hoping to be out in the garden enjoying some of the normal sunny weather that we have here in Porto, but today it's a little cloudy, a little overcast. Not bad for the vines because of course they need a little bit of water at this time of the year, but nonetheless not ideal for taking pictures. Because what I'd be doing sitting out on the terrace there would be enjoying a great glass of Taylor's chip dry and tonic water. Today, what we're going to be doing is talking a little bit about port cocktails, and I'm going to be joined on the line by Andy Seymour, who is going to give us his favourite cocktails. But before I do that, I just want to show you perhaps how we do a white port and tonic, or a Taylor's chip dry and tonic here in Portugal. So, a couple of stones of ice, bit of the Taylor's chip dry. Sort of mix it more or less like you might sort of, maybe if you're making a vodka tonic, gin and tonic, something like that. Of course, one of the things about port is that it's not too alcoholic, it's only 20% alcohol, it's half the alcoholic strength of one of those spirits. Top it up with a little bit of tonic, okay, like this. And then what we tend to do here in Portugal is that we'll dress it not only with perhaps a little bit of our beautiful lemons that we have in Portugal, but we're probably also going to take a little bit of mint, gives it that nice bit of colour, sticks it in, and what we get is a beautiful, refreshing cocktail. So port's great for this. But, you know, you don't want to hear a lot from me because what we've got joining us online is Andy Seymour, because Andy is in cocktails. He's written several books on it. He's toured all over America. He's done great events from running the Oscars to major parties for major celebrities all around the world, in fact. So Andy's our man to talk to us about an alternative to the chip dry and tonic. So let me just press the button and get Andy in on to this call so that he can share with us some of the amazing cocktails that he has been making for people. So Andy's going to be literally joining us very shortly. And whilst we wait for him, I just want to tell you a little bit. This is kind of how we tend to have it in Portugal, sitting on the terraces overlooking the River Douro. A little bit more exotic might be to put it into a beautiful highball glass like this, which is really lovely shape. But Andy's with me. Andy.
Hello, Adrian.
It's good. Last time you and I were together was in the Vogue Cafe bar here in Porto, and you were sharing some wonderful new cocktails with me. What have you got for us today?
Well, you want me to jump right into it?
Andy, you are the expert on cocktails, so I think if you jump straight in there and tell people a little about your experience with using port for cocktails, and share with us perhaps your recipe. And looking at where you are, you've got a lot more of the equipment to hand than perhaps I have. So yeah, jump right in.
All right. Well, I mean, the whole idea for me has been, about 5 years ago, we started talking about this idea of spending more time really getting port involved with cocktails. It belongs in cocktails. Obviously, as a wine, you can't do any better. There's so much respect. Can you hear me?
I can hear, actually, and I can hear you very well, but I was just wondering whether it was me or you, because either I'm on the side like this,
I can
or you're round the other way. But kind of one of us
hold that thought.
Is going to have to move a bit to
see if I can
get it less into. Hey, that's looking good.
I got a little too fancy, Adrian. I brought a tripod out and I tried to go sideways.
Yeah, now that's perfect. We're now both in the same plane. It means we don't have to stop the drinks by having them at an angle.
It was confusing. I was confusing myself, but I'm used to that, so it's going to be okay. All right, so you can hear me. I'm now, facing the same direction. So everything's good. No, I mean, I feel really fortunate because, about 5 years ago, started doing work with you, with Chris Forbes, and with the amazing team from the Flaggate Partnership, talking about the fact that, as well known and as truly respected as port has always been, there's definitely had been an opportunity to find more ways to do it in cocktails. And like you talk about, the chip dry, or Whitewater Tonic being such a classic in Portugal, so easy. First of all, that drink is magical, delicious. I believe we consumed a responsible amount of them while we were in Portugal. Maybe just past responsible, but in a good way, in a healthy way.
I would quote a friend of mine who sometimes says that we occasionally became over refreshed.
If there's such a thing. But I mean, again, I choose to believe that refreshment should know no bounds and no limits. So we refreshed the heck out of ourselves with some Whitewater Tonic. And, one of the things that I have always really enjoyed is how versatile port is in cocktails. I mean, you've obviously got this amazing range of wines. And what we've been doing over the last, again, 5 years here is kind of taking our tour around the States, and just, reminding bartenders. It's like, again, I'm not telling anybody anything that they don't know when I talk about port and cocktails. It's just, there's so much going on in the world of cocktails right now. And port, I think, kind of fell into that category, with some others that tons of respect, know it, don't maybe know as much as I could or should, and therefore, don't always think about it. And what we were trying to do is push it a little bit more front of mind, because, again, so many delicious styles of wine to choose from. And that's what we as bartenders love to do, is just find different ways to bring flavor, find different ways to bring, exciting ingredients and things that are unique. And again, one of the nice things about port right now is that it's still got a little bit of a unique quality to it. When I walk into a bar and I pick up a cocktail menu and see port on that menu, I'm super stoked, because I know what I'm drinking. But B, what it is. It's cool to start to see a little bit of that momentum happening behind it, and bartenders starting to say, "Oh yeah, this is something I can get into my repertoire." And white riffs on Whitewater Tonic, I'm seeing quite a bit, especially as it starts to get warmer here in the States. That would be a drink that people are drinking if we ever get to go back to bars.
And we tend to have this with, like this, but we tend to have it with some olives and some, salted almonds. And it's a great thing sitting on a deck, kind of watching a sunset, with a very refreshing Whitewater Tonic. But you've got some other stuff for us. So.
I got stuff for days now. We did a drink, and it continues to be one of my favorites. There's a kind of a drink. There's a drink called the Dunlop, which we improved by kind of flipping it back around, in taking the idea of rum as sort of the base in kind of a Manhattan style variant, and flipping it around and putting the port up front. So we're do a Tawny Pour. We've done it with some different ones. I thought I was going to do the Taylor 10-year, and alas, I only had 20-year Tawny. What are you going to do?
Hey.
Sometimes.
How you suffer.
So a little bit of again, any amazing Tawny Port will do. We'll just do a little bit of the 2 ounces of that into my mixing glass. See, I can't see all the things I'm doing. I got to build on a higher surface. Hang on, Adrian.
Okay.
I have a plan. I don't know what my plan is yet.
We like a plan. The plan is good.
Sometimes you gotta have a shoebox. You gotta keep a shoebox behind the bar.
Hey,
it happens.
This was a shoebox I prepared earlier. Here it is.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, what should I do with those shoes? I'll put them under the bar just in case. All right, so we got 2 ounces of that. We'll do an ounce of aged rum. I often do an agricole rum, but to be honest, through the magic of television, I left it over there, and I didn't want to run off camera. So I grabbed what was nearby, which is a little bit of the Santa Teresa Gran Reserva.
Now that's the advantage when you've got your experience, Andy, that even if one ingredient's on the other side of the room and you can't run off camera, you can kind of immediately make it up with something else.
The good news is I got a lot of stuff back here. It's just anyway, I didn't actually nail it. I also need some bitters. So I'm gonna go behind me. And of course the bitters I'm looking for aren't there, but
they're in the shoebox.
It's okay. It's a well-stocked bar. It's just not well-stocked for anything that I need right now. So we're gonna put a little drop of the. Give a shout out to our friend Lauren Moat, little bitter swing. They're Moondog bitters. Sometimes I'll do like a mole bitters. Aromatic bitters works just fine. The basic idea is letting the tawny just do what it does, which is be delicious and beautiful and fragrant and have all that nice kind of I don't know, flavors of fruit, like all that berry fruit. And obviously the 20 years probably a wine that we're drinking by itself, but I have been for many years espousing the fact that if it's good enough to drink by itself, it's definitely good enough to go in a cocktail. Now that doesn't mean we can throw it on every cocktail menu. But the idea being have a delicious base ingredient, you're going to get a delicious cocktail. So that's the idea here. I do have a pre-chilled glass, which is again is too low. So shoebox it. When in doubt, shoebox it, Adrian. That's you can if somebody's not hashtagging that right now, we're missing an opportunity. God damn it.
So key message today is you need good port and a shoebox.
I mean, honestly, if you have those two things, I don't really like. Again, global pandemic, my ass. Let's just do this. So we'll pour that baby out. Again, I have literally been drinking these throughout. I keep a bottle of Tawny and a bottle of rum agricole in my kitchen at all times. And throw this together at any given time. I'm going to zest a little grapefruit on top of that baby. And that is the improved Dunlop with, there it is. Where would I be? Shoebox, Adrian. I swear it's a theme. But little Taylor Flatgate 20-year Tawny or 10-year Tawny or, just whatever Taylor product you want. It's going to be delicious. A little bit of beautiful aged rum to kind of, again, add that depth and complexity. Because we want the flavors of both to not, we don't want one to overpower the other. This is obviously, it's a full-bodied wine with a lot of flavor. So at the same time, we want that to shine, and we don't want the rum to kind of overpower that. But at the same time, just having a little bit of base spirit along with the port, it gives us that opportunity to carry the flavor a little bit. And a little bit of bitters just to kind of add a little bit of complexity. Some citrus across the top. I believe they call that deliciousness.
Yeah.
Is that what they call that, Adrian? I mean, that's what they call
it. Yes, delicious. But, I always think about port. Port always comes at that moment when you're with family, with friends, you're joining together. And it always, to me, I always use this expression, port is the oil of good conversation. It's that, you're relaxed, you're having a chance to meet, to get together with friends. And after all this crazy lockdown, I think a lot of us are going to want to be let out, have a chance to, chat with family, chat with friends, share something, and perhaps, show off some of the skills that we've learned while we were in lockdown. And if one of the skills was how to mix, great cocktails, then hey, why not show that off and explain to people, because it's very sociable, and even if we've got our distance between us, we nonetheless can share the same experience, which brings us closer together. So I really feel this whole process that we're all in, we're going to come out of it pretty well the other side. And the cocktails, it's really interesting. You've just made there something remarkable. I've got my chip dry and tonic over here, but can you tell us just what else is happening in the cocktail scene in the States? Because to me, that's also kind of interesting. We're looking at port, but what are the other trends that are taking place?
I mean, this would be a time normally when you're coming from the end of winter into spring and summer. So a lot of times this would be when cocktail bars are flipping their menus, turn into a little bit more refreshing styles. Obviously, a lot of that, and so many good friends that are in the restaurant and bar business are dealing with that, struggling with that, figuring out what it is going to be like on the other side. That being said, when we think about cocktails and when we return to cocktails, or in the case of every Zoom call that we've been on with my company over the last 6 weeks, it's we've employed airplane rules, which means you can drink at any time. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but yeah, we get on a plane. And the flight attendant asks you if you want a cocktail. It's safe. Doesn't matter if it's 6 a.m, 6 p.m, flying a red eye. It's a good time to fly. So we've taken those airplane rules back to our Zoom conference calls and things like that.
Yeah.
So I think the trend right now is just, look, these are challenging times. In some ways, it's hard to stay optimistic. It's hard to stay positive because we still are trying to figure out what this is going to look like at the end. But I think, what we've been trying to do with Liquid Productions is just see, what is coming. How is this an opportunity and not just a challenge? Because, our industry will change and it will continue to evolve. And that's great. Challenging and hard, but at the end of it, there's got to be something wonderful that comes out of it. So we're just trying to keep that type of positivity, stay really engaged with, all our friends in the industry, and just, again, work with great people like you, Adrian, and these amazing wines to try and share the love. We're doing as much as we can. We're definitely going to do some more cocktails with port as soon as there's an opportunity to get around. Maybe continue to get bartenders involved and thinking more about this. But I mean, the fun part about cocktails in the States right now is trends are really everywhere. It's they're almost constantly someone's reaching out to ask people, in the biz, mixologists, people like myself, whomever, what's the next trend. And honestly, it's tough to say because the trends exist in all directions, whether it's port, whether it's, some lesser known categories, like, again, not necessarily lesser known anymore, but things like mezcal, things like making cocktails with Calvados as a base spirit. There's a lot of different ways to think about it. And I think just in general, I've been very fortunate to be doing this for a long time. I started bartending, well, a really, really, really long time ago. And then for the last about 20 years or so, I've been doing various versions of education and setting up, brand ambassador programs and being very fortunate to teach and mentor a lot of the people that I have met along the way. And what's cool is that depending on where you are, depending on what the season it is, depending on what people are exposed to, we love to try new things. Cocktails for me, and this goes back to, my earliest days as a bartender when I was not making anything fancy. If I had a fresh lime to squeeze in it, Adrian, I was feeling pretty proud of myself. But cocktails for me, and I think for, almost all of us in this industry, have been a great way to expose people to things that they didn't know about or might not think that they even wanted to try. I mean, it's hard to think about it now because whiskey has gone crazy over the last, 4 or 5 years. But there was a time when people really just, yes, they were, single malts, they were drinking those and they were sipping on their bourbons. And yes, they were always whiskey drinkers, and Manhattan's always been a delicious cocktail, but it was not necessarily something that everybody gravitated to the way they do now. So, whether it was whiskey or mezcal, or, I mean, again, going back to some of
all of which, Andy, I think, brings us to a couple of points you were saying there. Is airplane rules, I assume, means it's cocktail hour somewhere in the world at any time of the day. It's cocktail somewhere. Secondly, the coming together over a cocktail with friends, with family, whatever, is really important, and perhaps sharing with them something new, something exciting. And I think the third point I always think about when I'm enjoying cocktails, and particularly when I've got here, my chip dry, Taylor Flatgate chip dry and tonic. For me, this is about hot evenings in the Douro, in the intense heat, watching the vines kind of slowly maturing, ready for the next harvest. And it's all these special moments that bring back special memories as we come together. And I think regardless of how we come out of this and how long it takes, and we've all got to help each other. But nonetheless, being able to reminisce and to think about great times and be reminded of great things we've had in the past, but also look, as you say, optimistically to the future. So I'm delighted to have had this short opportunity this afternoon to be able to share some time with you to hear the importance of a shoebox in a cellar. Hear about that.
Honestly, that's the stuff that people won't tell you. Sometimes you got to peel back the curtain. You got to look at what's really happening. And yeah, shoeboxes are real. This is a real thing that's happening.
It's great.
I'd like to say I was on the leading edge of it, but I feel like you're right there with me.
Yeah, so look, Andy, it's been excellent. Thank you so much for sharing your Taylor Flatgate 20-year-old with us and giving us an insight into what's happening in the cocktail scene, which I think is really exciting and really positive. And I hope that, you and your family and all your team over there stay safe. And what I'd just like to finish off with by saying, cheers to you and cheers to everybody that's tuned into this. Yeah, you're running out. Hey,
Sorry.
I'll give you some.
You're always willing to share. Yeah, same sentiments here. Good luck to you and to
Yes, good luck.
Cheers for that, and thanks for having me.